Hello, everybody, and welcome to another program on lighting the world with truth. Today we have a special friend here, a guest that is my friend also, and he will introduce himself. Let's name the program The Courage to Change, and you will have to figure out why that's the title. So please, go ahead, Carl.
Good morning, sister. Good morning, everybody. My name is Carl Fields, and I'm from Racine, and I am involved in a couple of different things. Sister Lois is involved in many things, and she reaches for us often to come and tell our truth, tell our story, which I'm more than happy to do with you all today.
Okay, well, welcome to the program, Carl. Now, would you tell us about your life experiences, because you have a real interesting life here to talk about.
Well, thank you, sister. My story is pretty simple and complicated at the same time. It's a matter of me having some struggles in my life. I'm from Chicago, but I grew up here in Racine. Mm-hmm. And I went to elementary school on up. And from the beginning, my struggle was school-related, economic-related, struggle with in the families, because I was connected to several families with my stepdad and my mom. But all of those struggles led me to make a lot of poor choices. And those poor choices landed me in juvie, which you know all about.
Juvenile detention, yeah.
And after that, landed me into selling drugs, a lot of other poor choices, and ultimately they landed me in prison. And so
prison here in Wisconsin? Or?
Prison here in Wisconsin, yes. And state level prisons. Mm-hmm. And I was in prison for 16 years.
16?
16.
Oh.
16, yeah.
Yeah.
And I had to figure out a different way of doing things. So, you know, for me, my prison experience is one that was, you know, tumultuous, but it was also of redemption. It was also
it really recovery. Being in prison was redemptive?
It can be, in spite of.
It can be. Yes, but was it for you?
Absolutely. I have to say so. It was the sort of thing that I really gained a lot from, in spite of what they gave me, and it was so much about people on the outside reaching in, but it was also about the few opportunities afforded to me, having the courage really to reach for them and utilize them while being there.
Okay. Was your experiences, and I work in the prisons, as you well know, was your experience in the prison, how should I say, negative, positive, or both?
Very much both. Very much both. Initially, when I went in, it was a matter of having a year in and about 17 to go.
Oh, yeah.
And looking down that kind of a barrel, that kind of a gauntlet.
Yeah.
It was, I got to do something.
Well, how old were you?
I was 21.
Oh, yeah. 21. Okay.
And my daughter was about 18 months.
Oh.
And I just recently learned that I had another child on the way. Turns out it was a boy, a son. So, my struggle was very heavy on my chest. Yeah. Because as a new parent, coming from a scenario where my biological father wasn't present, I always told myself I wanted to do that differently. So the fact that I had failed at this life goal was something that I couldn't shake. And I had to figure out how to do something about that, because they were here, they're present, so it's still a life goal. Yeah. And so part of what was driving me was to do better.
What inspired you to change, though?
Well, I suppose the inspiration was part school, part personal life. School was always an interest of mine, although I didn't feel like school really drew in a person like myself, person of color.
You mean school in prison?
No, school on the outs. School here, Racine Unified School District.
Oh, okay.
There are always a few key people in young persons' lives, and some of my teachers really drew me in to thinking about school as being a strong possibility for me, and that could change my life. So,
well, but in prison, what inspired you to change? You started in prison to change.
Well, yes, but what I learned is I always talk about it in terms of threshold, and once an individual crosses that threshold and is ready to make a change, you usually take examples with you. And a lot of people have given you those examples before you were ready to change. And a lot of my examples that I used as models and, inspiration to change came from when I was here at home. So I definitely acknowledge them whenever possible. And part of that change was possible because of what they showed me back when they thought I wasn't listening.
Like, what do you mean by
I guess what I mean by that is there was an old program. It was called OIC. It was here in Racine. It was Opportunities
OIC.
Industrial Center or something like that. And my friend Denise Freeman, Gary Cotton, they were mentors, but they were also part of this youth advocacy program. And they gave me opportunities that I didn't want, but I took them out of respect for them.
Oh,
And when I was in prison,
yeah.
they actually became some of those people that I call voices in the darkness.
Oh, wonderful.
When you're in segregation, when you're in solitary confinement, when you're in your room and it's just you, all of the advice, the voices, the criticisms that you've been given in your life, they all come to you.
Do they?
It all bears down on you, and
Oh.
if you can't filter out the negative from the positive in that, you'll crumble. And I was able, through the grace of God, to filter a lot of that out and hear those positive voices. And a lot of those voices came from people who worked with me just as I was.
Oh.
I didn't have to change in order to be in their presence. I didn't have to be something or somebody else. They just, well, you're a young knucklehead, and we accept you as you are. Come be with us and let's talk. Those people were the changing force for me when I transitioned in prison. And I did it in part on their behalf, but I also did it because I knew they'd be here to help me work this out when I came home.
Wow, that's wonderful to have friends like that. You
Right.
know. So that was the process, or the inspiration, whatever you want to call it, that helped you to change.
Those were building block pieces. The biggest fulcrum I would say is that my mother passed away. She was killed here in Racine.
Killed.
Yes, she was strangled back in early 2000. I went to prison a short time after that.
Oh my.
She died. I came unglued. Shortly after that, I made all of these poor life choices. Went to prison. Had an interaction with the police that was very negative, much like the ones that we're reading about and seeing now. I
Yes.
shot at the police and they shot back. And through the grace of God, I was able to keep my life in that scenario. A lot of young brothers and sisters these days aren't. And so after that, I went to prison, really sorted out why I did that, how I did that, what she would want from me, and how she would want me to be a better father, because I'm a father no matter where I am. And so that, all of that weighed heavy on me. And I was also fortunate to find a lot of people in prison who worked in prison, who lived in prison, and who were all willing and able to show me some different pathways.
Wow, that's beautiful, Carl. All that. So, so what are you doing now?
Well, I am 2 years removed from prison. I released 22 months ago.
22 months ago. Wow. Okay.
And so we've been humping from day one, as you well know.
Yes.
I am the vice president of a statewide group called Ex-Prisoners Organizing, Expo.
Expo, yeah.
And Expo is part peer support, part civic engagement, part community activism. And it talks about so much about restorative justice, full participation in civic engagement, full restoration in a person's not just their mentality, but their spirituality. So much about this work for me is understanding that you are part of something bigger than just yourself. And every time, good or bad, you make a decision, you bring with or drag down a lot of people with you. And by people, I mean the energy that you carry. Because people care about other people. So when you drag down your own energy, a lot of people who care about you's energy goes down too. And there's a loss. There's a huge community loss there.
Exactly, yeah.
And so I'm into that. I'm also, I do my community organizing work out of Racine Interfaith Coalition.
All right.
And that is where we're connected with the Restoring Our Communities group. And Restoring Our Community started off as an 11 by 15 campaign, which was trying to get 11,000 people released here
Yeah.
out of Wisconsin prisons,
Yeah.
state prisons, before 2015. That didn't happen, but we started a tremendous amount of energy around that, and the campaign has morphed into Restoring Our Communities, and that is so much about the push around treatment alternatives and diversions, treatment instead of prisons, TAD funding, TAD way of thinking, and that's about not just mental health, addiction, but also behavioral health. Behavioral health is one of those components in all of this that is usually left out because behavioral health tends to relate to certain populations. And when we're talking about behavioral health, it's all there. The language around it and the energy around it seems to always be, well, those are criminals. Those criminals,
And the word criminals.
right? They're just making poor choices.
Yeah.
But when we're talking mental health, when we're talking addictive health and the components that go along with that, then we're talking diseases and we're talking help and resources attached to that, and people first, the language. So I do that work around there because with Restoring Our Communities, we wanted to focus on the front end of all this work and not just the back end of people like myself, of recovery and how to reintegrate with society, how to properly assimilate, if you will. But on the front end with kids, and I know you're passionate and your work is strong in working with kids. I asked the board that they include a new focus, which was the K-12 initiative. And the K-12 initiative is all about school to prison pipeline stuff. We can't fix this if we aren't being honest about what's broken on the front end. And an institution is an institution is an institution. If one institution works to the benefit of another, and we're talking about schools having these racial disparities and economic disparities, and this pipeline is being built either into education, further education, the job market, or prison, and the numbers say that the vast majority of young minority kids are being fed a particular way, we got to be addressing that. We can't just be addressing the fact that prison is overcrowded. We got to be addressing what mechanism is being used to get them there.
That's right.
So I asked that, school to prison pipeline focus become a part of the Restoring Our Communities Task Force. And our particular focus in that group is doing something specific around the suspension and expulsion rate numbers here in Racine, because they are atrocious.
Oh,
and that is a tangible thing that we can point to, and it's a tangible goal to address.
Now, you do something else, though.
Well, I do.
One more thing I know you do.
Excuse me. I work at a day shelter. I'm the program manager for a place called the Hospitality Center. And for me, that is social justice work. It's also a calling through my own spirituality. I try not to push what my beliefs are about the Lord and about about the church onto others. But we do feed people there, and we are building to provide certain services, or at least open our doors so that others can bring that service in. And we feed about 100 to 150 people a day.
Every day?
Every day. Our doors are open 4 days a week. We're hoping to expand that with some partnerships around the city as well as the city.
Yeah.
And we operate out of St. Luke's Episcopal Church. Here
That's
in
right
Racine.
downtown.
That's right, right, which is smack dab in the heart of downtown, which is right next to the county jail. And we receive people all the time from the county jail. And would you believe it that the county jail releases people at 2 and 3 a.m. in the morning?
Oh, I know it. Just unbelievable.
I mean, how does that further public safety when they say they're all about public safety? That part I don't understand. But they release people at 2 and 3 in the morning, and we are particularly mindful of that in the wintertime, times like now, because people are releasing with no coats. Some people have no shoes. Some people are in a situation where they're releasing and they live in other counties, so they're literally stuck here. And on these days, I try to get to the job as early as possible. And believe it or not, I find people on our doorstep all the time. Our policy is not to let people in until the official open time.
But
But how can I stick to that?
I know. Here they are. Yeah.
All right, I
Yeah.
got a warm coat and a hat on. They don't have either.
Yes.
I mean, so I don't say wait here on the stoop until I can go and get you a coat. I say come in and let's get some coffee
Wonderful.
and let's talk. I love that they know they can come to us. I love that people inside of the county jail know that we're right across the street, and that's one of the first places
Yeah,
they should
wonderful.
come. That there is my blessing, and that's part of my work, and that's part of my restoration.
Wonderful. Well, Carol, you have lived a life so far, and you're doing now just wonderful things. Is there anything that any last words you'd like to tell those that are listening to us
Well,
today?
I suppose I would let your audience know that the courage to do the work is not just for minority people; it's for everybody because we all have a stake in this work.
Yes.
And so many people that I know, a lot of my white friends, a lot of my non-minority friends, they do this work, but they're unwilling to step forth and say so. And so they kind of do the work in the shadows in supplement to what we do. And I get that everybody can't be out front with this,
Yes.
but I ask that they help to change the social narrative if they believe it to be just what we're talking about. So, and because of that, the narrative change comes before the policy change, and that's what we always talk about. The policy change is what a lot of my professional academic friends talk about, but the narrative change is what people who live it are always talking about.
Yes.
We need a bridge between the two, and we need people working on both for the betterment of all of us.
Wonderful. Well, this has been just tremendous, Carl. I thank you and I appreciate you giving your time today
Sure.
so that we could do this program for others to listen.
Sure.
And
Who says no to Sister Lois?
wow. But anyhow, I mean, we don't even know who's listening, but
Right.
this goes all over, you know. And
Yes, amen.
You know,
Amen.
this is wonderful. And as I said, I thank you so much
Indeed.
for doing this.
Well, you being in the work that you're in, if we're in a situation where
Very similar.
if doing this work together,
Yes.
and Wisconsin has the biggest racial disparity in criminal justice in the
Exactly.
country.
That's right.
And
I don't know how many people know that.
Right now, the world is talking about incarcerating people, and the United States has the most incarcerated people in the world. At some point, Wisconsin's going to be on the world stage talking about this criminal justice thing. We need to be part of that conversation and be prepared for that.
Exactly.
So we're preparing.
Okay.
We're preparing, sister.
Well, blessings on all that you're doing, Carl, I'm sure. And my listeners, I'm sure that you are amazed at all of this. And I hope you will be inspired to go and do likewise and try to make some differences from wherever you're living. And so I thank you for listening to us and being with us today. Again, you know, we have the courage and we can do it. We can change it. With God's help, we can do anything. And let's all remember that. And as I always close the program, remember, once you know the truth, you are responsible for it. Thank you and blessings to all.